so let's talk a little bit about early specialization in youth sports. It's a pretty big issue in the United States currently, where what we're seeing is the rise of overuse injuries in youth sport. So I'm not talking about traumatic injuries, broken bones, strains, things like that. I'm talking about overuse injuries that are commonly seen in professional populations. So a perfect example of that is the rise of Tommy John surgeries in Little League pitchers, whereas in the past you would only see that in the professional level athletes. Now we're seeing, these surgeries that have commonly only been needed to perform on people that have been playing the sport for a long time. We're seeing them being performed on kids. And one of the reasons that is being hypothesized that this is happening is the focus on early specialization and the volume of how much kids are playing just one sport. So the National Athletic Training Association actually just put out some guidelines recently of how to minimize the risk of overuse injuries in youth sport by managing sport specialization in a way that's going to be safe. So they're not saying that you can't play just one sport, but they've put out some guidelines that if you follow them, you're minimizing your risk of overuse injuries while you're playing those sports. So the first one is to delay specialization for as long as possible. What they mean by that is when a kid is younger, it's more beneficial to sign them up for different activities, let them try different things, use different muscle groups, so that they're not just doing the same repetitive motions over and over again. One team at a time. This is a big one that I see in the clinic where, if the kid is being managed in one league, but they're a part of 2 or 3 leagues, the volume that they're doing in the one league is not going to matter because in totality, they're still doing too much. So making sure that you're focusing on one team at a time, especially if it's the same sport. The next one is less than 8 months a year competing in the same sport. So not saying the person can't be training year-round for the sport, but as far as competing, being in competition, they're recommending less than 8 months in any calendar year for that one sport competition. The next one is no more hours per week than the kid's age and years. So for example, a 10-year-old should not be doing more than 10 hours a week of organized sport. That doesn't mean that they can't be outside and be active more than 10 hours a week, but they're finding that the overuse side of things happens more in the structured, specialized training. So making sure that we're managing the volume, that it increases over the course of a childhood, that we're not doing more hours per week than the child's age and years. Making sure that we're getting 2 rest days in per week. This is to allow adequate recovery week to week and making sure that the child is able to get rest in between competitions. And the last one is making sure that at the end of each season, that there's a little bit of a break in between each season, especially if it's going to be for the same sport before they're jumping right in. Another thing that I see pretty often in the youth sports setting is that the teams either overlap each other, or if one is ending on a Friday, the next one starts on a Monday. So making sure that if we're looking at the totality of a youth athlete's career, that we're thinking, okay, let's not just jump, jump, jump. Let's making sure that year to year, the child is still getting better, still getting stronger, still improving because we've programmed adequate recovery in between the seasons. So it's not only going to minimize injury risk, but from a performance standpoint, it actually enhances performance to make sure that you're utilizing recovery, because in that way, you're not getting into overtraining, you're not getting plateaus in strength, you're making sure that each year the child can come back to their sport better and better, and at the same time, not injured. If you have any questions about those guidelines specifically, they were put out by the National Athletic Training Association, so you could find that on their website more specifically.